All right, it's time for the day's business news. Stephen Carroll has joined us on set. Stephen, good morning to you. Let's start with Ukraine. The International Monetary Fund has been giving its assessment of the state of the country's economy.
Of course, we know that Ukraine's economy has been hard hit by the fighting in the east of the country, among other issues that they've been dealing with. The International Monetary Fund, though, did manage to find some positive signs in Ukraine's economy. It says there are signs of economic stability taking hold there. That's despite a forecast that Ukraine's economy will shrink by 9% this year, worse than had been previously thought because of the cost of the conflict. Prices continuing to rise this year. Inflation expected to hit 46% by the end of the year. Now, this assessment from the IMF is coming as the Ukrainian government is trying to negotiate a haircut on some 23 billion of its debts. The finance ministry said that's essential to turn the country around.
All right, let's go to Greece next. It's facing another deadline. Tough one there. Deadline this week.
Yeah, that's right. Again, this involves the International Monetary Fund. You're wearing a very different hat. Greece owes 300 million euros to the IMF this Friday, and it's not clear yet whether or not the country will be able to make that payment. Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras has been speaking to Le Monde newspaper here in France, in which he's been lashing out at Greece's international creditors for their position in ongoing talks on economic reforms. He says that a lack of an agreement after 4 months of negotiations was due to the insistence of certain institutions of submitting what he called absurd proposals and displaying a total indifference to the democratic choice of the Greek people. Now, that sort of statement in line with what many members of the Greek government have been saying about these talks. Let's listen to the foreign minister. He was speaking in Germany yesterday.
96% of the money we have received in the last 6 years has been paid back to our creditors. This means I give you money so that you give it back to me and claim it's solidarity. They have succeeded in securing their own money and tell the countries of Europe the myth that this is solidarity.
Well, let's take a look now at what's happening on the markets in Asia today. Chinese shares trading pretty significantly up. This after some weak data on the manufacturing sector, which is bizarrely perhaps giving markets in Hong Kong and Shanghai a boost. That's because investors expect that it will lead to more stimulus spending from Beijing over fears of that slowdown in the world's second largest economy. Just a very slight gain, as you can see there on the Nikkei in Tokyo. The Kospi in Seoul is trading down.
All right, tell us a little bit about business news here in France. Workers are finding it harder to get hired on permanent contract, the elusive CDI.
Yes, exactly. This is 3 letters, very important if you live here in France, but will make no sense to you unless you do. This is a permanent job contract here in France. It doesn't just mean, of course, that your job continues on, but it does mean that you accumulate a whole set of rights and are practically unfireable under French law. It's very, very expensive and difficult for employers to sack workers that are on these CDI contracts. Now, it can make life extremely difficult for companies, but it's also being raised as an issue that's a block to employment here in France. So it seems many companies are trying to get around the rules by hiring more workers on fixed-term contracts. Shirley Sipman explains.
In this mattress factory, workers are first hired for short-term contracts. Since January, the manager recruited 15 people. Only one of them got a permanent job.
First, we offer a contract for several weeks, several months if the workers are temping. Then we give them a 6-month contract, and if everything goes well, they get a permanent contract.
French companies have never hired so many workers through fixed-term contracts. Only 14 years ago, 67% of recruitment was done through these types of contracts. Last year, their share was at 86%. And the contracts are shorter and shorter. 70% of them last less than a month. Companies rarely offer permanent jobs because they make firing hard and expensive.
Today's growth is only the beginning of a possible economic recovery. It's all very fragile. Companies are still overstaffed. They don't need to hire. They can satisfy additional orders with their own workers.
In France, having a permanent job is not just about having work and a salary for life. These contracts can give guarantees and privileges other contracts don't, like getting a loan or buying a house, which can be much harder and more expensive without them.
All right. Well, earlier, Stephen, in the sports news, of course, we've been reporting on the latest results at Roland Garros. And as you explained, you've got the business angle. It's not just the sporting in itself that's interesting at Roland Garros.
Yes, if you're watching Rafael Nadal take on Jack Sock, the American, later, do take a look at his wrist, because his watch, this particular model, it was made for him. It's worth $775,000, made by the Swiss watch company Richard Mille. It's part of a sponsorship deal, of course, that he gets to wear it. But Nadal said that it did take some adjustment to get used to playing with the watch. A lot of other French, or rather tennis players who have watch sponsorship deals don't play wearing them because they say it's difficult for their game. But he says he's adjusted to it. It's now part of his skin. He has had 2 of them stolen, though. So perhaps watch out to see what it looks like when he's playing later.
2 of them stolen, so that would be $1 million.
He's on the 3rd one. Yeah, more than.
All right. Stephen Carroll with the business news. We'll see you a little later on in Live from Paris. Thank you.